Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This podcast is proudly supported by Cooper's Ale House Jeps Cross and the ALH Group, Matt Hall from DR Kart South Australia, HandyPay, SA's leading personal lender, Patrizzi Course, and Tindo Solar, Australia's only solar panel manufacturer.
Show on Radio Italia Uno, Negative Camber. My name is Jamie Lemura, President of the Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide, and with me is my co-host Leigh Harrison. How are you?
Good, mate. How are you?
I'm doing well. We've I could say we kind of hit the big time now, mate. We've gone from podcast and urban tales to FM radio now.
It's been exciting. It's a big rise for the club. Obviously, we've done sort of 12 or 15 podcasts now, so it's good to be here live and then throwing a different challenge into the mix. Exciting to see what the next few weeks brings for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess for everyone that's at home and listening to the station that haven't heard of us before, you probably are wondering about who we are. And I guess it kind of really starts with the club. So Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide was founded 5 years ago from a mutual friend of ours, Adam Vella, and really it kind of started when he was selling merchandise for Ferrari at the Grand Prix, and he got wind of the fact that there were supporter groups and clubs globally of the Ferrari Formula One team, and so he went through a bit of an adventure to raise the funds and actually start the club. He flew over to Italy and Maranello. And actually, founded the club that over there officially, and so essentially, the Scuderia Ferrari Club mantra is a family of clubs officially sanctioned by the Formula One team all over the world. So we're not actually just a private club per se.
We've got those links back to the factory in Maranello.
100%. So we are very different to the Ferrari Owners Club, where you've got to have a car effectively to actually be a part of that club. For us, it's actually a chance to be those that are passionate about the Ferrari Formula One team or motorsport in general, to actually be a part of the club and share something in common, including things like social activities and bits and pieces like that. So myself, I actually took over presidency earlier this year, about 3 or 4 months ago, and about 12 months ago, we sort of thought about the concept of actually starting a podcast promoting the club that was all about motorsport, especially Formula One and that sort of thing as well. And so on the day of our 5th anniversary, we launched the show, and we've got about 12 or 13 episodes up on Spotify at the moment, and here we are. I guess it's where we're at.
It's been such a good thing to be part of right from the start. Obviously my passion's not generally in Ferrari itself, but like you said, it's not just about Ferrari and having to have a passion about Ferrari. It's about motorsport and sharing the passion for motorsport with like-minded enthusiasts as well. So, like we said, you don't have to be a Ferrari fan to jump on board with the club. If you want to come out to our social events, you're more than welcome. And it's a good time out with like-minded people who love motorsport, who love talking cars, and love having a good time.
One of the things that really separates the club from, I guess, other clubs globally is the fact that we actually diversify what we do. So we do social activities that are engaged in motorsport. So the club runs a hire kart championship, which is across a variety of hire kart centres around Adelaide, in particular Jeps Cross, Tailem Bend and Paraka. We run some social events, so we'll do things like Monza Grand Prix nights, and sometimes in the past we did Melbourne, across a variety of facilities and areas. But then also we run a tipping championship, and we also run our own racing team known as the Scuderia Adelaide Racing Team, which we'll touch on a little bit later on.
Yeah, it's been, like you said, we've gone across a whole branch of areas. It's totally different to any other club in the world when we've reached out into those areas. Never mind the podcast and now the radio show. I think we're the first club in the world, the Scuderia club in the world, to hit the radio. So, look, we're really testing the boundaries of what we can really offer to all of our members with this club. It's been a pleasure to be a part of, and let's look forward to what the future's got to bring for us.
Yeah, exactly. So, A lot of the listeners will probably ask themselves, well, how does that apply to what we've got tonight? Well, this show is really all about motorsport. So there's going to be a bent towards the club. We are now officially the only supporters club in Australia. There was a Melbourne and a Sydney arm, but they are no longer. So we now effectively are the Australian supporters group of Ferrari Formula One team. So there's always going to be some information about all things club related. We'll talk about the local and domestic karting scene because we'll touch on what the Scuderia Adelaide racing team's all about shortly. Obviously Formula One, so we'll talk a lot about Ferrari, we'll talk a lot about all facets of that wonderful sport, and we obviously go through regular updates about that. V8 Supercars we'll talk about quite extensively as well, MotoGP, and then we'll also cover other motorsport, motorsports around the world and also domestically as well. So in the past we've been very fortunate enough to interview people too, so drivers or identities alike, and that won't change.
Yep.
I think for those listeners out there, by all means, if you feel that you want to contribute and you want to sort of do some Q&A, ask us questions, we're more than happy to have that interaction. That's what this show is all about. It's ability for everyone to either talk Ferrari or talk all things motorsport and share that passion.
Exactly right. And we're not afraid of a question. We'll happily research it for you. So if you're sitting there, you've got a question on your mind about motorsport, feel free to let us know via the Facebook channels or phone into the radio station. We'll jump you on air and we'll get you going. But what else has the club got? I know we've got the merchandise and all that sort of stuff, but where can I get in touch with people from the club?
Good question, mate. So we've actually got our website, so it's www.sfcadelaide.com. You can view our online store where we've got our own merchandise and paraphernalia. But the most important thing is memberships. So the club wouldn't exist without memberships. Memberships are actually, they're not expensive. They're only $70 for an adult membership and $30 for a junior. In the past, you were able to get things like merchandise packs and stuff like that direct from Ferrari, and they've kind of relaxed that a little bit now to make it more digital. However, you get your own membership card, you've got your own login details, you can engage with the drivers overseas. So every month or every race meet, we actually get emails that will then be distributed to members, allowing them the opportunity to actually interview interview drivers on Zoom. And it could be Carlos Sainz, it could be Charles Leclerc, it could be Mattia Binotto, it could be any of the hierarchy with that. But then also that pass and that membership buys you a ticket to engage in the activities that we do. We do, a good example can be the Tail and Bend 200 or the 4-hour endurance race that's going to be happening later on this year. So members, for example, will actually get the priority preference to compete in that event because of the fact that they pay to get that privilege. So, we obviously, it gives you the opportunity to contest in that tipping championship and the like as well. But membership supports the club. The funds go back into the club as well. And without members, we don't have a club.
Exactly right. So everyone jump on board, and we look forward to meeting you all in the future and having you come along to our social events. And joining in the karting championship. It's an awesome thing to be a part of, so please jump on board and we look forward to it.
So speaking of karting championship, we'll cross over and commence. The club ran an event in Paraka, at Pro Karts Paraka down at Research Road on Friday night. So testy, let's say, in the conditions. It was raining, it was wet, it was cold, and we ran slicks. There's that old chestnut again, slicks on a wet weather track.
You're a brave boy.
I am a brave boy, but that's why I'm a Leo by star sign, so bravery, Lionheart. But it was really good fun. So we had about 15, 16 drivers come out and participate, and we raced their Maxi Grand Prix format. So it was a 10-lap qualifier, and then we had two 15-lap heats followed by a 25-lap final. It was really good fun. Yours truly ended up getting a podium.
You did well. I saw your little trophy, and you were pretty proud of that. You
I was pretty chuffed.
Champagne.
Yeah, absolutely. I got Simon Reichelt.
That's good. You
covered him with the champions. Yeah. So some of these names, listeners, that you'll start to hear are ones that are on our podcast. So tune in onto the Spotify channel to look at those. But I'll read out the results of all 14 drivers. We had a couple pull out right at the end. So overall was Luke Fraser first. Second was Matt Stead. Third was yours truly, Jamie Lemura. Fourth was Dylan Richter. Fifth was Simon Reichelt. Sixth was Brad Kirtland. Seventh, Chris LaRocca. Eighth, Joe Nero, owner of Dolcetti's down at Glenburn Road. So go and see them for a nice cafe and a pastry while you're there. Daniel Barch, Mario Duva, Ros Harrison was 11th, your mum, God bless her. And Angus finishing in 12th, and then Jordan House in 13th, and Joel Harris in 14th. So one of the best things that we got was this overriding sentiment that actually the drivers really acquitted themselves well. Like we, Pro Karts Paraka were very, very complimentary about the driver skill that was put out there. And
I saw some text during the week that even though you guys had treacherous conditions with rain and the like, and racing at night time on slick tyres, you all drove really well and were really respectful of each other and looked after the karts and the track. And Pro Karts Paraka were definitely very, very thankful of that in their messages during the week.
Well, the thing is that racing slicks on a wet track in a controlled environment, like the hire kart facilities where you've got the tyre barriers and the protections around the go-kart in a facility like that, you actually learn a lot. You learn about the ability for steering input, brake modulation and pressure. You get the ability to actually be able to understand throttle control and how to apply it. But then it also gives you racecraft because you've actually really got to drive the kart, and it's a great leveler because weight is completely thrown out of the equation all of a sudden.
Yeah, suddenly levels the playing field off. It's all about your driver ability then. Weight, like you said, doesn't make a difference. You've got no traction anyway, so you can't do anything with it. It's about how you modulate the throttle, how smooth you are as a driver, how much you limit the wheel spin, and how much you can pick the line that's got the best grip.
Yeah, 100%. And for me personally, I love the wet. I love it.
That's my favourite too.
Yeah.
I used to get up every morning and do a rain dance, even in the middle of summer when we were racing.
I did take your advice and put the wetsuit on, so I was nice and dry, grime free. Can't be said too much about my race helmet though. That was pretty secondhand.
That's always going to get pretty secondhand, but at least you were a lot drier than 3/4 of the other people out there.
Yeah, exactly. And I know Simon was quite vocal about it on social media, but I also wanted to give him a shout out too. So Simon Reichelt was featured on a couple of podcasts ago. He's a good mate of both of ours, in particular you. Recently went through a lung transplant. So that episode, hear that full story, listen to that. He's just an inspiration, just the fact that he's walking the earth
100%.
at this moment.
Yeah.
But he's also got, he runs his own speedway team, Team 51. And so to see and to have that race that we had with him for 25 laps or so without any body contact or anything of that nature, especially in that final, was awesome. I really enjoyed it, mate. So thank you. That was good fun.
Yeah, no, perfect. And like I said, it's so inspirational, the story that Simon's come through. And now that you think about it, he wouldn't be here today probably if he didn't have that lung transplant. And before he had that lung transplant, there was no way he would have been able to have come out and enjoyed that sort of racing. So kudos to him for going through what he's gone through, and look forward to having him on again, and he can tell us more about that story.
Yeah, cool. So before we go on to more topics, this hire kart round is part of the Hybrid Hotel hire kart series that we have. It's part of the ALH group. If you want to participate, members can join. Non-members can join and race, but the members are going to be eligible for winning the internal championships that we have. If you want to buy a ticket to that and enjoy the remaining 3 races that we have spread across the second half of the year, jump onto the website, so sfcadelaide.com, get a membership and go and open the doors to a fabulous journey in local motorsport. So, all right, you're going to be listening to Negative Camber moving forward with Jamie and Leigh, Adelaide's official and only motorsport show from the Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide on Radio Italia Uno 87.6 FM. We'll be back after our sponsors and we'll be discussing karting.
The life of the party at the Bolivar Go-Kart Club. So sad to see the news during the week of her passing, and condolences to Daryl and the rest of the family. The racetrack's never been the same without her, and hopefully she's pushing those gates open up above and letting everyone roll out. Yeah,
well, I mean, I suppose her standing in the sport and within the club is the fact that the main gates, when you roll out of the outgrid at Southerns, are named after her.
Yeah.
I know that Southern Go-Kart Club went to great lengths this week to honour her. They reverted back to the original club logo, which she loved, and despised the new one. They put videos up of her doing her last ever rollout and the gates and stuff like that as well. So
it goes to show how much of a touch she had on the track, especially with the messages that came in through the week. They were coming from every corner of Australia. That's obviously her reach. Everyone loved her. She was the best grid marshal that karting's seen in Australia, and like I said, she's going to be missed.
Yeah, 100%. So again, our thoughts are with her, with her and her family. So okay, karting. So the Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide actually has its own karting team. We decided to start a team probably about 2 years ago. In very short summation, the team was started by Adam and myself. We had 2 go-karts that we inherited, didn't have anything to do with them, decided that we were going to use it as a vehicle to promote the club.
And 2 tanks of go-karts, mind you.
Yeah. Yes, the much-loved SQs. So when the 4-stroke racing category commenced with Karting Australia 2 years ago, we thought perfect. It was an opportunity for us to get out there and race go-karts and extend what we were doing with the high kart series. So Karting Australia run a class called 4SS, and it's designed purely for, everyday people like yourself and myself that don't have the budget to endeavour to race in 2-stroke, that still want to have the rush and the thrill of racing go-karts at a budget level.
Yep.
So the engines are sealed, they're only 10 to 15 horsepower depending on the class. Maintenance is low, costs are low for what motorsport is. And so we've got a team that races quite regularly. A couple of weeks ago, Monado Go-Kart Club or Go-Kart Club of South Australia, correct me if I'm wrong, had their Winter Cup, and we had 2 of our little girls racing. Ocean Colangelo. Yep, Ocean and Liliana, and I'm very, very fond of those little girls. They've warmed our hearts within the team, and as you know, in a very short period of time. So Ocean Colangelo, I came across her through her vlog that her dad, Danny, had put up on their Girl Racer 46 channels on YouTube and Facebook. And it touched the heart. It really did. She's a cute little kid, can clearly drive. So she's got some great talent. But also when we saw the video footage, she was a very passionate Ferrari person. And I sat there and looked at it and I thought, how do we not have her as part of this team?
She's been a breath of fresh air in the club as well. She just lights up the pit paddock.
Yep.
She's got skill, like you said, and when I was working with you guys the other day at Southern Go-Kart Club, just the desire for her to succeed. It reminds me of myself when I was that age, coming up through Cadet 9 and Cadet 12, the karting classes for the younger kids. She's just got this massive aura about her. She wants to succeed. She's got the drive to succeed. Her dad wants her to succeed. Looking forward to working with her some more. She's just a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing that, and I suppose Ileana as well. So Ileana races in the cadet class as well, Cadet 9, and she's actually good friends with Ocean off track. But she's also displaying some really good talents as well. So Ileana Ostojic is her name, and her father Peter knew Adam a long time ago. So for me, it made sense to have the both of them together as part of the team. But it also meant that we were a point of difference, that we were promoting girl racing drivers within the team amongst us old fellas.
Yeah.
So and these kids can drive. Ocean on the weekend in Cadet 12 ended up getting second overall again, and Ileana, she had a really patchy weekend. So she had a massive accident in practice on the Saturday, and actually bent the chassis of the kart. And so what that meant, it almost looked like she wasn't actually going to make the grid on Sunday. And Danny, bandied together and helped Pete get the kart back on track. And she was actually in contention for a 3rd place overall for pretty much a majority of the day, and then got caught up in someone else's accident on track for the final and ended up finishing 4th overall. So she was a little bit downhearted, but
it's still a solid comeback. To bend a chassis, that's a pretty major incident on a Saturday. So to bounce back from that, sleep on it, come back and still put that effort in and that desire to get to the front. And she's still, 3 race meetings in, so on her P's, she's got to start at the back every race. she's doing a great job, and like I said, that's guts to come back from a pretty serious crash like that to get back on track and be in the hunt for a third place.
Yeah, 100%. For our listeners at home that don't really know too much about karting, give us a brief explanation about Cadet 12 and Cadet 9 and what motors they run and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, so Cadet 9's where you start off. It's for drivers between 7 and 9 years of age. They run a rock engine, a Vortex rock engine, and they're hitting speeds of about 80 kilometres an hour. They've got skinny tyres, so grip's not super high. They've still got a good amount of grip on them. And then we move up into Cadet 12, so it's sort of like the stepping stone. They get a little bit more power, they get a little bit more grip, they're going a little bit faster. It's all about the pathways. The idea is you get in at the youngest age possible, you step up into 12s, and then you go up into your junior classes, and everything just becomes a little bit faster, a little bit more grip, a little bit more high risk. But then you've got the budget entry class like you were speaking about with 4 strokes as well. So there is the junior 4 strokes, so you can get in at 12, 13 and not spend a whole bunch of money to see if your children are interested in it as well. Or you can get in at a senior level. There's really a class for everybody, all weight divisions. Yeah, it's everybody's sport.
Yeah, fantastic. And another member of the team, member of the club, the Polumbaros. So they've been racing quite extensively in the KA4 class now for a few years. So I wanted to reach out to those guys as well and talk about their results, because they are members at the end of the day. So Luca raced on the weekend at Monado and actually ended up getting driver of the day in his class in KA4.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad. Finished 4th overall in his class, which is a great result. KA4 is quite competitive. It's that next step up. And Luca's been acquitting himself quite well over the period of time that he's been racing. So to get driver of the day in that category is actually a pretty good achievement. So props to you, my friend.
I like that the club's also introducing these things like the driver of the day and a really rewarding participation. It can be a bit off-putting sometimes if the only thing you see is the same guys getting a trophy for 1st, 2nd and 3rd. It was one of the things that stood out to me. One of my first race meetings, I got a encouragement award because I would go through the whole in-grid when we come into the pits and everyone had stopped again and shake everybody's hands. And to have that noticed and give me some drive to keep coming back and doing what I was doing, it can be a bit downhearting seeing everybody get the same trophy, 1st, 2nd or 3rd. So to have recognition for your performances and like an up-and-coming award, it's really good from the club to put that initiative in place.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's nothing worse than putting in all that effort over the course of the week to build up and prep your go-kart, race, drive really well, right, and then be KO'd or taken out in an event or mechanical failure or anything of that nature, and then walk away with nothing, which is, it's part and parcel of motorsport. To be acknowledged, though, for your efforts that others can clearly see that you may not necessarily feel like you're being recognised, I actually think is a great thing. I'm certainly a big believer of you need to be rewarded for the result. You can't always get participation awards for everything you do because you don't, as a child growing up and then into an adult, you don't understand the meritocracy of winning. So I think that karting has got a really good balance with that at the moment. You don't want it to become overkill.
Exactly.
But certainly acknowledging the efforts of people from time to time is also motivating for the parents as well.
100%. The dads and mums prep the go-karts most of the weekend, so to see their kid light up just for the fact that they've been recognised for something during the day, it doesn't even have to be winning. They've done the best overtake, they've passed the most amount of people on the day. It really gives the parents the drive to succeed, and that's the sort of thing that karting at a grassroots level needs, is that they need that member engagement to drive members to bring them back and keep them going. We've had a case recently where that sort of wasn't the case, and there was some bullying and whatever happening, but we stamped that out, and it just needs to be more bring people to the sport rather than shy them away. Yeah,
100%. I also wanted to send a special shout out to Matt Hall from DR Kart South Australia. He and his team dominated the Tag 125 class that weekend at Monado. Matt's been a massive supporter of the team over the last sort of 6 to 12 months. He's done a lot of work behind the scenes on all of our go-karts to sort of bring them up to speed. He's also going to be a very, very important figure moving forward within the team as we look to sort of do a bit of combination, and also I want to take the time to acknowledge here Patrizia Course for their support that they've done for us in the past and present as well on the retail side of things as well. So Matt Hall is actually going to be coming in to the studio, I think, to have a bit of a spot as a guest in the next fortnight. So he's got a story to tell about his racing career and his businesses too. So
been racing with Matt for 20 odd years, so I can definitely attest that we've both got some stories, or we could probably do a whole show on just our stories alone. No, exactly. So our next event's going to be, as a team, we're going to be racing at the Festival State Cup at Southern Go-Kart Club on the 22nd of August. Please, members, if you do come out, or if you want to check out the racing team, our marquee and our tent is up. You can't miss it as you walk into the gates of Southern Go-Kart Club down just off Waterloo Cornwall Road. Robinson Road at Bolivar. Yeah, exactly. And it's designed to be a hub for members to come out and watch the team race and hang out, have an espresso or two. Fresh cake sometimes. One day we might do a show from there. Well, it'd be nice. Nice. I'd love to do it. We've just got to pick the right event to do it as well. So you're listening to Negative Camber with Jamie and Leigh, the official Scuderia Ferrari Club radio show. We're going to be back after a couple of songs, and we'll start to head into Formula One. Look, in regards to, his Formula One season so far, you can't fault Max in terms of how he's been driving the car. Clearly, it's made to suit him, and Sergio Perez, to his credit, has done what I think has been a sensational job in adapting to a car that was never actually designed for him at all. And Max, I guess, when is going through that phase that one has from time to time in your motorsport career, that literally everything you touch turns to gold. Yeah. And he had pretty much 2 perfect weekends, more than you could ask for at any stage. Like, fastest laps, pole positions, lights to flag wins. It was his first ever Grand Slam, and for those that are not familiar with Formula One, a Grand Slam is where you qualify on pole, you lead every lap of the race, and you set the fastest lap in the race as well. So he's smashed it out of the ballpark, and like you said, everything he does at the moment is turned into gold. Yeah, 100%. But the thing that I found really interesting was the change in performance from race to race at the same track with Mercedes. So it's very rare that you actually see them fall further behind in the space of a week than what they were when they arrived the previous week. Yeah. To a point where Lewis was actually overdriving the car and making fundamental mistakes that he hasn't done for a while. And we've touched on this many a times. I've spoken about this on probably 3 or 4 occasions now, but it's been pretty easy for Lewis, and he's had the best car by a long way. And when you've got the best car by a long way and you don't have to drive your heart out, it's quite easy to be monotonous and just hit your marks. But now that he's actually got to do some thinking and do some driving, we've seen stories that he's back in the sim and all that sort of stuff. He's not done that for 5 or 6 years. He hasn't had to. So yeah, exactly right. He hasn't had to. But it goes to show the pressure that is mounting on him, the pressure that is mounting on the team, and they are making these mistakes. They're suddenly starting to throw radical setups at the car, which is explaining the lack of performance in the second week at Austria. It's good to see that we've actually got an out-and-out fight for the championship. Yeah. The thing that that Lewis gets really rattled, and when he starts to get rattled, is when he starts to get despondent to his engineer, Peter Bonington, or Bono, as he's known on Sky Sports, where he's thrown everything at it, and we'll touch on that again for when we cover Silverstone Part 1, let's say. And the despondency that he's almost exasperated, that he's run everything he possibly can out of the car, but he's not getting anywhere. Yeah. In fact, it's getting further and further away. It rattled Mercedes that much that they've actually come to Silverstone now with a whole raft of changes, upgrades, which they claim have actually better than what they thought. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I tell you what, they wouldn't want to let the lead blow out any further than what it is at the moment. They've got to start clawing their way back in, otherwise it's going to be over before the end of the end of the summer leg. Yeah. So they've definitely got to get their skates on. I thought we saw some of that in Silverstone, which we'll touch on, but it's not quite gone fully their way. What I was surprised at was Ricciardo turned himself around in the second race at Austria. He started coming back towards Norris and matching him some more, despite having another shocking qualifier. But he's starting to come to grips with that car, and I think, again, we'll touch on it again with Silverstone, but he's on the pace again in Silverstone. So that's been a real eye-opener for me, and it goes to show that with a couple of races at the same track, and he can really adjust and learn to what the car's doing, and he's getting that confidence in the McLaren.
Oh, look, and that was one thing I actually wanted to touch on, was Ricciardo's performance. He beat me to the punch, but that's cool. Definitely improved race pace. Like, you'd start to see, the thing that I like about Danny Rick is his racecraft, and the fact that he can actually make something out of nothing, right, very, very quickly. And you actually saw that probably for the first time this year properly in Austria, the second race.
Yeah.
So, and he made up ground very, very quickly. But I guess at the end of the day, when you're starting 15th, 16th, 17th, whatever it was, there's no way that you're going to be able to go any. You've probably maxed out what you've done. For that race.
You're sort of maxing out the spots. Obviously, that helps at Austria as well. It is a track that you can overtake on with the 3 DRS zones, drag reduction system, where your little flappy wing comes open and you get a little bit of extra speed. The commentators say it's the same as like a Honda Civic getting up behind you and giving you a push along.
Hey, easy on the Hondas, mate.
You love your Honda Civic.
Yeah.
But, like I said, it's good overtaking track at Austria. But it still takes a driver to maximise it. We didn't see anyone else make up as many positions as Danny Rick. Improved performance, improved race pace, improved everything, and it looks like it's carried over to this weekend. Yeah.
So whatever he was lacking, because McLaren were quite open, and fair play to them. Andreas Seidel and the rest of the team, and Zach Brown, we're actually quite open enough to say, well, we've actually identified what the problem is with him, right? And we're now going to take steps to fix it. And, in the past, other teams could have just thrown him under the bus.
Yeah.
We've seen it time and time again. Ferrari, God bless them, have actually done that, to drivers in the past. All you have to do is look at Seb Vettel the last 2 years. So to see the fact that they've backed him, and he's now duly delivered, means that whatever it was, because they haven't been open with it, right, has now started to sort of bear some fruit.
Exactly right.
Which is good. Right. It is very weird, though, to see Hamilton. You can actually go to see how much he cares about winning title number 8. But he's also they've signed another
2-year deal.
2-year deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, which is surprising for me, because I was expecting him to call stumps if he got number 8 at the end of this year.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing stopping him from still doing that if he does get number 8 this year, but
True.
He's got a drive to succeed still. He wants it just as badly as anyone, and I think had we seen a runaway championship like we have the last sort of 6 or 7 years, maybe that would have not happened so quickly in the season, a 2-year extension.
Yep.
The fact that he is being challenged this year, that renews everybody's enjoyment in the sport. It's renewing fans' enjoyment in the sport. It's renewing drivers' enjoyment in the sport. So if I was thinking I was getting bored of driving a Formula 1 car and suddenly I've got this title fight on my hands, I'd be happy to sign another 2-year deal as well. And look, the pay packet's not going to hurt.
Yeah, exactly right. Lando Norris's performance was heralded, in particular with the UK press. And I guess they felt that, he drove very, very well, no question about it. Probably wrung more out of the neck of that McLaren than it was probably really capable of. But it's quite funny. His weekend was punctuated by a series of, when I say driver errors, they were, not say Nikita Mazepin driver errors, but really pushing the limit and finding out exactly where and how far he could take the car at the track. To a point where he's actually mocking himself, like I've run out of talent on the Friday, for example.
Yeah, well, it's a track that you can do that with. There's not really a massive penalty if you do overstep some of the marks. You might run wide into one of the runoff areas, but the corners aren't really that tight, so you're not going to have a big accident there by just overstepping the mark a couple of times. So good on him for pushing, and he's smoking. He's on fire everywhere he goes. He's another one that's in that Max Verstappen sort of run of form where everything he's doing at the moment is coming up absolute gold. And hopefully that rolls on with him and Daniel, if they get on top of a good car, they're going to be formidable for sure, because they are two of the best drivers in the sport at the moment, in my eyes.
Yeah, look, Lando's form, this is a clear step up from what it was last year. I'll go as far as saying Carlos Sainz made him a better driver, but that might just be pulling the chain a little bit. However, the jump in performance and the step up in professionalism with Lando, you've even been seeing him joke far less than even with the media. He's a lot more serious, a lot more focused this year than what he has been in the past, and that's actually been reflected in his driving. I would almost go as far as saying you're now actually, right before our very eyes, seeing the changing of the guard.
Yeah.
Where the young guns are really starting to show through, like Charles Leclerc, Carlos,
Max Verstappen,
Max,
Lando,
Lando, 100%.
George Russell.
Yep, 100%. And so we're now seeing the future be rolled out in front of Mick Schumacher if he was given a better car.
Yep.
I think
it's his debut year, so
100%.
No one's going to shine in their debut year.
Yep.
There's seats for him. Don't you mark my words? There's seats for him.
Oh, no worries.
This is just to get him out of F2 because once you win the championship in Formula 2, you're not allowed back. So he had to go somewhere, and Haas was his best option.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, Haas have very, very close links with Ferrari anyway between engine supplier, and you could argue probably some of the design that are part of that car, even though Dallara claimed that they designed it.
Yeah.
So, look, without a shadow of a doubt, I think over the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see, the older guys that we're familiar with, the household names, even Seb and that sort of thing, sort of take a backward step, if not right off into the sunset. Yeah. And these guys are now going to be the future, and they're fearless. Like the modern driver these days, we even see it from grassroots level at karting. They don't care. They're out there to win at all costs, and it's exciting for the fans to see the elbows out. That's what people pay to see. They want to see the gladiators. They don't want to see,
I don't want to see a procession.
Yeah, exactly right. All you have to do is look at the 92 season if you want a procession.
Exactly. We can go down the main street and watch the Christmas pageant every year if we want to see a parade. So we want to see the elbows out. I'm loving the fact that some of these younger guys are coming through and trying to stamp their mark on Formula One and bring back some of the glory days. And I'm super excited. I know we're going to touch on this a bit later, but see what this new car can bring as well, because I think that's going to spice racing up a lot. Yeah.
The big talking point that came out of that race was actually penalties for, I suppose, overtakes. Your thoughts before I talk about mine?
I never saw the Perez one. I made the fatal mistake of going, this race is signed, sealed and delivered, and falling asleep. So I woke up the next morning and seen that there was another 4 penalties handed out. But the one on Lando early on, I think, was justified. Mm-hmm. I know I had a lot of flack at work over the next couple of days with people, stirring me up saying, that was a soft penalty, this and all that. But look, the move was on. There was a point in time where Lando knew that Perez was on the outside of him. You see from the onboard footage, you can see the front of Perez's car. You can see Perez's helmet. So Lando knows he's there, and he just plain runs him off the track. Right? You have the option. You have the option to press the accelerator and drive the normal racing line, or you have the option to let go of the position, come back and fight another day, and leave your foot off the throttle. He chose the first option and drove Perez straight off the track. So in my eyes, they've done absolutely no injustice to the sport of Formula One by putting that penalty on Lando, despite what I got copped the next day at work.
Look, I can look at it from 2 points of view. I agree with what you're saying, 100%. At the end of the day, though, I do have to question what Perez was trying to achieve when you're passing on the outside of a right-hand bend.
Lap 1, he was there.
Yeah.
He technically, he was in front, so he had achieved what he wanted to achieve. Lando covered. Yeah. He's made the pass on the outside, and with lap 1 stuff, you go for it. Yeah. Again, we're talking Silverstone sprint race. Look how many positions Alonso made up in the first lap of the Silverstone sprint race. Yeah. Not that we can call it a race, but
according to the FIA, it's not a race.
9 or 10 positions up. So, and most of that was around the outside. Yeah, it can be done. You just need to have a mutual respect from the person that you're overtaking. Yeah, exactly. And
and when I say I look at it from both perspectives, as you know, I'm a historian of the sport, and if they're going to claim penalties for driving standards like that at the same time, what you have to do is look back in the mid to late 90s and even some of the early 2000s where the moves were probably far more aggressive and far more risk-taking. Right, there was no penalties awarded in surf back then.
Yeah, we're in a different era now, and the race director's different. He's trying to stamp his way of racing on the drivers, and you can argue that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that would not have been given as a penalty. But we saw it last year. Hamilton got a penalty. So I think as long as there's some form of consistency and there is that, I suppose, education going out to the drivers that this is the expectation that we're trying to set. If you step outside of those expectations, you're going to get penalised.
To be and true with what you're saying there too, and credit to the officials for that meet. They were consistent because they pinned Perez twice for doing exactly the same thing to Charles Leclerc, and if not, probably just as bad, if not worse, to a point where Perez was actually putting his hand up in the post-race in the bullpen for post-race interviews, pretty much putting his hand up saying, "Yeah, I think I overstepped the mark."
And that's the thing. As long as there's consistency, no one's going to complain, right? As long as the boundaries are set and we operate within those boundaries, and they're the same for everybody. It's just the way racing is, and it's written in the rules. If someone is on the outside of you, you must give them racing room. You've got to act like they're there. Someone is, if they're avoiding a collision by you're driving them into the dirt. You've upset their race. Your race should be upset as well.
Yeah. What was Fernando's famous line? They must always leave the space.
Exactly
Leave the
right.
space.
Leave the space.
Leave the
Exactly
space.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Is Fernando Italian now?
Well, give me some credit, man. What sort of when he speaks Spanish, you know? So, speaking of Italian, we'll touch on Ferrari now too, considering the mothership. Much better improvement compared to the last couple of races, in particular with tyre wear. So they actually played the tactical card in qualifying, and actually, in their terms now, whether that's media spin or not, they intentionally did not make the final 10.
Intentionally, unintentionally
did not make the final 10.
And 12.
Exactly, right. Mainly for the choice of tyres and tyre wear. You could say, given where they finished, and Leclerc probably should have finished higher given the excursions that he had, but Carlos's race in particular was superb.
Yeah.
Especially when he's for both races he's trailing the Mercedes and they're having to let him through. But it just goes to show that the pace that they had they actually qualified better, right, probably should have been better than a 5th overall.
Well, they're struggling to get their tyres turned on, so that's what's letting them down in qualifying. If they can get on top of that, hopefully we'll start to see Ferrari come back to the form they had early on in the season and battling again away for the last step on the podium.
Yeah, I think the improvements that they've made in overall performance though has been quite good. If you compare to where they were at the same circuit 12 months ago, last year they were nowhere. Yeah, absolutely nowhere. So the improvement that they've made in that space of time was justified, and it's fantastic.
How awesome was it to see fans in the stands?
Oh, I know. What about the noise?
The noise, especially with Max and, same again this weekend with Lewis, but the noise coming from the stands.
Yeah.
Absolute awesome.
Yeah. The Silverstone's been an absolute treat in terms of seeing the crowd there. I don't know. I think the Dutch made more crowd noise than what the Brits have done so far.
When I went to the Yas Marina circuit last year at the Abu Dhabi Formula One Grand Prix, sorry, not last year, the year before, I was in front of a Max Verstappen grandstand, and boy, did they party.
Wow.
Oh, man, it was the noisiest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
At most of the time, you heard them over the party yachts over the other side.
Yep.
So they were loud.
Yeah, it'd be an awesome atmosphere to go and be a part of. It almost reminds me of a European football match in terms of that intensity. So, all right, after the break, we'll cover Silverstone and we'll start to talk in depth about what's happened with that overnight and some changes that have happened in the sport recently with announcements. So, you're listening to Negative Camber with Jamie and Leigh on Radio Italia Uno 87.6 FM. We'll be back after, very shortly with a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to Negative Camber with Jamie and Leigh, the official motorsports show of Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide. It's now just gone 8:05. We're hoping you're enjoying the show so far. So, British Grand Prix. So, some massive changes that have happened to a sport literally overnight. So, I guess we've got to break it down into segments in order to understand the changes. There's a bit here that's a bit involved. So, before we go through the results and our findings of the racing and that sort of thing.
The not racing.
The not racing. You know what? Sounds like a duck, looks like a duck. It's a race.
Yeah.
It's a race. So overnight they had the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. And what Formula One have tried to do is, I guess, dip their toe in the water for racing formats that coincide with the new car that's being launched next year, which you'll touch on shortly. So rather than doing the traditional, format, which was reduced this year, but it used to be 2 sessions on the Friday, further practice session on the Saturday, qualifying on the Saturday afternoon, and then the race on the Sunday. They've actually gone into what they call the sprint format, where there was only a single practice session on the Friday, followed by qualifying, etc. So it's best to actually understand in detail what these are. So, as you know, I like my data, and I've actually written the notes here for all the listeners to understand what's going on. So there's a bit to take in here, and I apologise if it gets a bit information dense, but bear with me. So, the changes to the weekend that describe the sprint format were as follows. So, on Friday, there's what they call free practice 1. All right, so that used to be an hour and a half, and it was just reduced to an hour. So essentially what FP1 becomes for this particular event was an hour session to prep the cars for qualifying. But what some teams were doing was they were actually divvying the session up into 2 halves. So the drivers loved it because it was a challenge for them. The engineers hated it because they couldn't actually work on the cars and refine them and sort of do that guesswork like they wanted to. So what it actually resulted in was a reduction of about 33% of track testing time compared to the normal. All right. So the focus was on qualifying. They only had 12 tyres in terms of allocation for the whole weekend. So it was 6 soft, 4 mediums, 2 hards.
Sets, not just 12 tyres.
Sets. So what it actually emphasised was an increase in pressure to be on your game, driver-wise, engineering-wise, strategy-wise, pretty much right from the outset, which was great because for the drivers it presented them a new challenge, right? But what it also meant was all the testing work that they would have normally done at the track, in particular with the meaningless FP1 session for the most part, all that would have been done on the sim work, right? So they were rolled out ready to go, right? As soon as FP1 finished, they were in parc fermé, right? Which it means that you cannot touch the car right from that moment onwards. It's ready for the race.
Yeah,
right?
Except a few small little bits and pieces here and there, but aren't really sort of detrimental to full setup overhauls.
Yeah. So what they wanted to do was the reason why they decided to go into parc fermé was that they wanted to eliminate the change of special cars just for qualifying, right? Which I think would have been cool. It would have taken us back to the 80s. You know, it would stick a 1,500 horsepower donk that lasts no more than 2 laps before it detonates. Yeah, why not? But some parts can be changed, right? But they have to be. They're selected by the FIA. So there's only like a small little checklist of items that you could replace in preparation for the race and for qualifying. So in qualifying. So the traditional, when I say the traditional, the recent qualifying format for Formula 1 was in 3 stages, in 3 15-minute segments, punctuated by 10-minute breaks. And the tyres that set the fastest time in session 2 out of the 3 determined the tyre that you were starting the race with.
If you qualified in the top 10.
Yeah, if you qualified in the top 10, exactly. So in this case, for this qualifying session, which was run at 6 o'clock local time Friday afternoon, the Q2 tyre choice was no longer determines the start. So now the choice of tyres that the drivers have got, complete free reign.
Well, I think that they also had to use soft tyres only in qualifying.
Yeah.
You had to use the soft tyre, you couldn't use the medium or the hard in qualifying.
Yeah. So the traditional format of that qualifying session stayed exactly the same, right? So then what the results did was determine the grid for the sprint race. Now, we'll touch on that point in a sec because the argument of that came up overnight by my other boy, Seb. We'll touch on that shortly. But the drivers who made Q3 have free choice of tyre compounds. All right, so anyone that finished in the top 10 have got free reign in the race to whatever tyre compound they want. But you know what? It's no different to anyone that qualified from Q11 onwards anyway. Mm-hmm. Right, so basically the whole grid's got free reign. Then on the Saturday, which was last night, so FP2 was a 1 hour session, right, which was normally FP3. So what this 1 hour session was that it was a chance for the teams to gather their long run data, all right, so what they would do over a stint on full tanks.
Learning how the tyres were going to react, how long would they get out of their tyres in the race format or the race sort of specification of their car.
Yep. Just
really dialing in the drivers for peak speed over a longer distance.
Yeah. And judging by the outcome of that sprint qualifying, they did do a good job. We'll touch on that in a sec. So what it means was that the teams gathered the long run data and running the 2 tyre compounds, a harder compound tyre and a medium, okay, to just check race pace. But then also they can check things like the balance of the car, the brakes, the ride height, tyre deg, all the bells and whistles that are going to be important for that race as well. Then it led into the F1 sprint, the race that's not a race. All right, and we keep saying the moniker of that because that's what the FIA pushed on everyone in terms of commentary and all that sort of stuff. So it was a 100-kilometre race, which depending on the track will depend on the length of laps. Right, so in this case at Silverstone, it's 17 laps and it will last somewhere between 25 to 30 minutes. And the idea or the concept behind it was that the cars were going to be fueled to a minimum, and basically they were to be run full tilt. Open slather, maximum boost, all that sort of stuff.
No tyre saving, none of this stuff. It was going to be flat out for as long as you can and hold on. Yeah,
100%. So, with the idea of it improving the spectacle. Okay, so, and then the finishing order of that race determined the grid for the race. Okay. The winner would actually then get 3 points contributing to their World Championship. Second would get 2, and then third would get 1. With the overall classification defining the grid. And then on Sunday, of course, is the race day per normal, which will be in, say, a couple of hours' time.
Yeah, it goes 11:30 our time or so it's about 3 hours' time.
Yeah. And so what that meant is that you get free choice of tyres, and instead of sort of running the traditional limited set where you start with one and then finish with the other, it could be a whole host of bits and pieces. So the idea being that it's meant to create unpredictability and that sort of thing. Now, traditionally, when they've run short practice sessions, it did create unpredictability. And last night, Max Verstappen ended up beating Lewis off the line from second on the grid to then actually win the race. But what it showed last night, because the cars can't be touched, is that there's going to be more than a single stop or 2 stops for this race, because their tyre degradation was probably 15 laps at best.
Yeah, they were definitely not getting as many laps as we thought they would. They can still adjust their tyre pressures a little bit to counteract some of that, but I don't think it's going to have enough of an impact to stop it from being a two-stop race tonight, which is, like you said, it's quite different to normal. Normally they sort of run a one-stop race, so 2 stops tonight really spices things up with the undercut, the overcut. How's it going to play out? So opened up a whole new world of theory.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the race itself was actually, for the first sort of 5 or 6 laps, was quite entertaining between Lewis and Max. But then I think what really made it come alive was Fernando with his start from, I think it was 11th, and he was 5th by the going into the third corner.
Yeah.
But what it also allowed that to do was, because he was running a soft compound, right, his tyres were going to degrade over the course of that 17-lap stint. So cars like the 2 McLarens and Seb, who eventually tracked onto Fernando, were nose to tail for the majority of the race. That was really the battle. Lewis was sort of there or thereabouts. He was about 1 to 1.5 seconds back. The thing with the current Formula One car, what it exposed to me was, as you're going through Maggots and Beckett's, you could be pretty much within the DRS range for that first portion of the lap. But as soon as you came out of Beckett's, then going on to the Hangar Straight, if you were on the nose of the car going into the first lot of the S's, as soon as you were coming out of Beckett's going on to Hangar, you would lose all momentum.
Yeah.
So we're talking maybe 2 or 3 kart lengths separation, which means that you're out of DRS range. It's just a pity that the cars don't have the ability at the moment, because of aerodynamics, right, to actually sit on the wheel and on the spoiler of the cars as they're going through all that complex.
So you're much more generous than I am. I thought that the race was very exciting for the first 5 or 6 corners, and then it became as predictable as it was going to be predictable. And then the only thing that, like you said, really spiced it up was Alonso. Once the 2 McLarens got past, but how long it took Ricciardo to get past and Norris to get past when he was so much slower, and that was evident by how far they drove away as soon as they passed him. It goes to show exactly what you're saying. The cars cannot follow each other, and despite Alonso being so much slower, the rest of that train couldn't get close enough to him. The guys in that train couldn't get close enough to the guys in front of them as well. And because A, they were chewing their tyres out whenever they did get close, and B, the front end was taken away from them, which we saw with Perez. He got a little bit too close to the back of Norris and had no absolute front end grip, and the back end overtook him.
That was the epitome of aero wash there with Perez.
Exactly right.
You don't really you very rarely see a car lose and spin on the exit onto the Hangar Straight.
Exactly.
Haven't seen that for years.
Severe lack of aero.
What are your thoughts about the whole sprint format thing?
I'm not a fan. I mean, look, not closing it out completely. But look, I think they just need to refine it a little bit. What I'm looking forward to seeing is if this 2022 car fixes some of that following issue as it's meant to, and then I'd love to see them adopt something like a Formula 2 where they invert the top 10 maybe, still award championship points, so they've still got to go for it from 10th or 12th on the grid like Formula 2 have implemented, and that will then help spice up the racing. But otherwise, like I said, I was quite vocal in the fact that it was going to be as predictable. The only thing that spiced it up was Alonso, and even then, once he sort of the field mellowed out, it was still a single freight train race.
Yeah, I'm on the fence at the moment, trending towards I'm not a massive fan, primarily because of the fact that what's the point of qualifying, man?
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, qualifying is that moment in the weekend where you are your absolute limit.
Yeah.
Where you're maximising the car, you're maximising yourself, you're maximising everything around you to create at that point, the ultimate lap.
Something that they should maybe look at, like Formula 2, they have their qualifying, which sets the grid for the feature race. So qualifying on Friday night, that's how they would line up for tonight's race.
Yep.
But invert the top 10 for the sprint race, give them free choice of tyres, and send them on their merry way.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Because right now, Lewis was meant to be half a second faster than Max had he not mucked his qualifying lap. But he's actually not on pole position because Max outdrove him on a sprint race.
Yeah.
So it takes away the purity of the sport. The whole point of the sport is to be at your maximum. That's where legends like Senna were created and renowned that stick in your psyche. I mean, these generation of drivers that are driving now, for example, right, still revere Ayrton for his qualifying, you know, and it's great to see, you know. So,
You want to see guys wring the neck out of it to get the peak performance, and like I said, hopefully it's obviously trial and error at the moment. Hopefully they do adjust it a little bit. There's plenty of ideas. There's plenty of smart guys in charge of Formula One. I'm sure they'll notice the deficiencies in the system. Hopefully they listen. There's plenty of people on social media that have an opinion and an idea, I suppose, of what could make it better. So fingers crossed there's a panel that's getting all those pieces together and they make a more exciting puzzle. But step one, which I think we will talk about after the break, is fixing this damn car. Yeah,
exactly. So we'll cover the new Formula One car for 2022 after the break. You're listening to Negative Camber, the official motorsport show of Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide on Radio Italia Uno 87.6 FM. Welcome back to Negative Camber with Jamie and Leigh, the official motorsport show of Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide. Now, my friend, you've got to fill us in about the new Formula One car for next year, which was launched virally over the course of the week.
Yeah, so we have the obviously announcement of the full-scale Formula One 2022 car revealed at Silverstone. It looks beautiful. It looks like it's going to be a contender.
It looks fast.
It does look fast. And it's been well received. So I suppose let's sort of go back a little bit. That car was supposed to be released for this season. But with the situation facing the world at the moment, as a lot of things have been, it was pushed back and we're going to face that new release in 2022. I suppose the first question is going to be to answer is what's it trying to fix? What's the whole point of bringing this car in? And we touched on it before with the following of cars. The cars these days are made to have the air pushed onto the track, or the weight of the car pushed onto the track with air flowing over the top of the car. Okay, so we're going to call that downforce. The force of the air down on the wheels pushes the car into the track. The more downforce you can create within reason, the faster the car is going to go. The switch for next season is we're going to be going back to the ground effect cars. So instead of the air being directed over the top of the car, they're going to try and create a negative air pressure underneath the car to suck the car to the track.
I love it. You know why? Because we're going back to the future.
We're
going back to the 80s,
back to the 80s, back to when racing was good.
Nose to tail.
Exactly, nose to tail. Fingers crossed, nose to tail. But yeah, it's a completely different way of thinking, a completely different way of building a car. The idea is to reduce the thing of dirty air coming off the back of the car, which is what all these little winglets and all the intricacies that you see on the cars has done. So how are they going to do that? What are the main characteristics of the car that they've changed to help them try and achieve this? We'll start at the front. There's a new shape of the front wing. Okay, the alignment of the elements and the detail of the elements on the front wing. So all those separate little planes where you see gaps in the front wing.
Yep.
They've been changed and reshaped.
It's massive.
Massive.
It's probably double the size of anything I've ever seen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's none of those little, extra carbon fiber bits on the end of the wing plates. There's none of that extra sort of gaps in the front of the wing. The shape of those end plates has been changed.
Yep.
It means that when you're running behind someone, there's less for that front wing to do. There's less ways that front wing can direct air around the car, which means there's going to be less aero sensitivity on the front of the car. So that's the first change. Next are the wheels and the tyres. So, quite a big change here. 13
inch bigger?
They've gone 5 inches bigger.
Wow, okay, yep.
So we've been gone from 13-inch wheels and normal profile tyres to an 18-inch wheel with a low profile tyre. So the overall sort of diameter of the wheel and tyre itself hasn't changed too much drastically, but the weight of the wheel has.
Yep.
They've also added covers to the sides of the wheels, which will then stop teams being able to think of funny ways to redistribute the air coming off the wheel. Okay?
Which is funny because they've gone back probably about 10 years where they were running wheel covers in the mid to late 2000s.
Yeah, when Braun came out with the wheel covers, when they sort of come up with that funky car, the double diffuser and all that sort of stuff, which again, the double diffusers suck the car to the ground, and that's how they were getting all their air.
Ferrari started running those at the end of 06, and then Raikkonen's 2007 car had the disc wheels at the rear.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but Braun took it to the next level.
Yeah, 100%. So that's the wheels. They're obviously a little bit different. It's going to be cleaner coming off the wheels, the air around the car. We move to the back of the car, the rear wing. Again, the shape of that and the end planes of the wing, the way that's shaped has changed drastically.
It reminded me a lot of the 1979 Renault.
It looks like a DeLorean or something at the back of the car. It's
got
got
Back to the Future.
UFO shape
There
of the wing, but the idea of the wing is now to lift the air and send it above the car that's following. So instead of before it deflecting and coming down into the way of the car coming up behind you, it will deflect the air over the top of the cars behind. So again, massive change and cleans up that air in the back of the car. The floor of the car has also been changed.
So hoping you touch on that.
None of those funky little wing plates or carbon fiber bits to direct air into the top of the car and suck the car push the car to the ground. There'll be none of that. It'll start at the front of the floor and it'll direct the air underneath the car to suck the car to the ground. Again, less dirty air helps the cars behind follow. Again, the bodywork, we're not going to see any of those funky wing planes coming off the side pods, any of that sort of stuff. It's going to be sleeker, lots more like an Indy car. So that the air, again, is not going to be so disturbed coming off the back of the car. And then finally, the weight is going to change of the car. So we're up about 7%, from 752 kilos to 790 kilos. Wow. And that's basically just to compensate for the extra size of the rims. So I suppose the list of things that have stayed the same on the car would have been a much shorter list, all with the idea of cleaning up the air around the back of the car so that you can follow closer. It's all good in theory. Let's hope it goes in practice, but let's look at some numbers. Currently, if you're following 20 metres behind the car in front of you, you're losing 35% of your aerodynamic performance. Next year, we're going to be looking at 4% of aerodynamic performance lost when following 20 metres. So, for instance, last night with Sergio Perez, he wouldn't have had that massive gap and then suddenly lose all the front end on the exit of the corner and spin out. When you get even closer, up to 10 metres behind the car in front of you, this year we're losing 46% of our aerodynamic performance of the car.
Unless you're aided by DRS.
Unless you're aided by DRS, which, but you still lose that. You were talking earlier through the fast stuff at Silverstone, they couldn't get close because they were losing nearly 50% of their aero performance.
Watch tonight, listeners. Watch it. You'll see what I mean. See what I mean.
Next year, that number is going to significantly reduce by about 50% down to 18% of aero wash lost in the draft of somebody. So on paper and on numbers, it all, and your computer simulations, it all looks really promising. We've just got to see it in practice now. So bring on next year's car and let's see what the thoughts are.
First of all, congratulations to you, because that's probably the first time I've seen you come out with a notebook full of notes on the car itself. I think, props to you, mate. That was well done. Good research.
I had to do some research.
Yeah. How did it feel? Because normally it's my job.
Yeah, look, I feel I've got a headache. It's been lasted all day. All last night I was up studying this car and watching videos and more on it. Didn't get much sleep, so yeah. That's my research done for the year, I think.
Yeah. On a serious note, though, I don't know whether you're not much of a relic for the old stuff. However, if you do yourself a favour, if we get any racing that is similar to the French Grand Prix of 1979 between René Arnoux and one of my boys, Gilles Villeneuve, where they're banging wheels and going side to side, passing each other left, right and centre, or we get the Spanish Grand Prix of 1981 at Jarama, where Villeneuve has been holding off a train of 7 or 8 cars and they're literally nose to tail. If we get races like that next year, then kudos to F1 for pulling it off.
100%.
Because you wouldn't want to spend all that amount of money and all of that research and spending all this time, because I was talking about it, especially the other day, with all the CFD stuff, millions and millions and millions of hours and dollars spent for it to be a flop.
Look, like I said, there's less on the car that stayed the same than what they've changed. They've really thrown the kitchen sink at it.
Yeah.
The only thing I wish they would have done, in addition to everything else that they have done, is shorten the wheelbase of the car. We're still at nearly 5 metres wheelbase for the car. Now, to put that in perspective, it's not like we're driving a Honda Civic like the wheelbase has evolved.
Can you leave my Civic alone?
We are literally driving prime movers at a Formula 1 level. The shorter wheelbase would have helped with a bit more nimbleness. Yeah. But look, good positive step forward, and let's hope it does everything that it says it's going to do.
Do they have to design the car, though, to that wheelbase length, though? Can they go under the limit, or do they have to be at that set base?
That's a set wheelbase. That's the sporting regulation of the car, the technical regulation of the car. So everything else on top of that is up to them sort of to build within the guidelines that the FIA set.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Look, for me, when I first saw the car, I was fortunate enough to watch the Fox Sports did the online presentation on 506 last night. And it looks great. I had to get my head around the colour scheme initially because of all the sort of graphics that they've done on it. But it did remind me a lot. It was a cross between a 1990s IndyCar, the ones that used to see racing at, say, the Gold Coast and that sort of thing, coupled with a Formula One car. So it still had that Formula One car identity, but then also you had a modern IndyCar as well. So they're very much, I don't know if it's the right term, but they've Americanized the car, but that's not
American owners now in Formula One.
Yeah,
so,
true. Now run by Domenicali ex-Ferrari. But I actually really liked it when they started to release some of like the current liveries on the next year's shape.
Yeah.
They look really cool.
Yeah.
Really good. I hope they go as good as they look. For the sake of the sport, that you can't have another 7 years of what we had with Mercedes for the most part.
I just hope that also it levels the playing field out a little bit as well. You know, everyone's getting on top of these power units, so it's more the car that's changing, not the power unit. So fingers crossed it brings a few more manufacturers into the fight at the front, so it's not just Mercedes, Red Bull. We really want to see McLaren, Ferrari especially, jumping up in fighting for those regular podiums and regular wins.
Yeah. Before we jump off to a break to start talking about Supercars, who's your tip for tonight?
It's hard to go past Max. I mean, I think they sacrificed a bit of a qualifying car with building a better race car.
Yeah.
So if I had to put a podium out right now, I would say it's going to be Max, Lewis, and then it's got to be Nando. Max, Lewis, Nando on home soil. I'm also going to put my proverbial house on George Russell stepping up for the English crowd and getting in the points for Williams. So that's where my basket is at the moment.
They've been a sleeper in the pack this year. Williams is slowly but surely, probably largely due to the efforts of George, have been sort of sneaking up into the pack this year. So, yeah, I reckon he'll be up there. I still think he's super quick, but he still makes the odd mistake or has an issue that contributes to him not scoring points.
Yeah.
I hope the expectation and the weight and the pressure that he would put on himself, being British driver, British Grand Prix, doesn't contribute to him scoring points, because he deserves it. He really does.
100%.
I think this race is going to be won at the start. I think if Max gets off the line like he did yesterday, feet all over, gone. So I would concur with at least, I actually see it as Red Bull first, Lewis second, and Valtteri third, to be honest.
Yeah, it's
so
probably a fair call. I like to throw things outside of the box in there. And
a
couple of times I've been all right with Lando coming up for the podiums. So, look,
Yeah.
I'll stick with my boy Lando.
Yeah.
I think he's going to rise to the occasion of the English fans as well, and put on a show. He just needs to not get stuck by a fast-charging Alonso at the start.
Yeah, cool. No, I agree. So, yeah, watch out for the race tonight, and fingers crossed we actually have an entertaining race at the very least, and it's not over by lap 3. So, we'll go to a short break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk V8 Supercars. Perfect. Welcome back to Negative Camber, the motorsport show for Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide on Radio Italia Uno 87.6 FM. It's now 20 to 9, and we're going to now cross over into V8 Supercars, and we've got a bit to cover there as well. So, the Townsville leg, the double leg, double header was run over the last 2 weeks. And the traditional date was actually meant to be last week, which was the Townsville 500, and then because of COVID and restrictions and bits and pieces like that, they ended up doing the Super Sprint today to kind of replace the Winton round.
Yeah.
I believe this afternoon they released some notifications of the fact that they might be going to Ipswich for...
Definitely going to Queensland Raceway in 4 weeks' time.
Yeah, cool.
To run around there. So that has been confirmed.
Yeah, otherwise they would have had like an 8-week break leading into Perth, and then they would have gone straight into Bathurst straight after that as well, which was you don't really want. So, and the reason why they've done that is pretty much down to TV rights with Fox Sports, where Fox have got an agreement with V8 Supercars to show 12 rounds live every year, at least for a championship season. So, and Ipswich was probably the greatly ignored out of the venues over the last sort of 12 to 24 months.
Yeah.
So to have that come back, I suppose, is good relief for the teams to at least have some more championship. But it just means those Victorian teams in particular are going to be out on the road for a fair chunk of time again, like they were last year.
I think it's going to at least give them a little bit of a break, though. With 4 weeks, the guys can go home, they can do their quarantine, they can spend some time with family before jumping back on the road again. So at least it's not similar to last year where they were on the road for 200 days or something like that. They're going to get time to go home with their family. I know Cam Waters was jumping on a plane tonight to head home, and Will Brown was doing the same thing, flying home. So, at least they've got that time with family and friends before they can, buckle in again for another stint at Queensland. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it wasn't until we sort of really spoke with Todd Hazelwood going back about 6 weeks ago now, where he opened up a little bit to give you a minor glimpse of the toll that it took on teams and families, for those in particular that are out on the road. Yeah. So for their sakes, for their mental health, their families and that sort of thing, you hope that it doesn't continue to be like that. I mean, for the sake of the sport's one thing, but, there's no sport if you've got no people in it. 100%.
So anyway, we digress. Okay, so we'll do the Townsville 500 first. Saturday pole was with Shane van Gisbergen. Then the opening leg of the 250k race on the Saturday, the top 10 results were Shane van Gisbergen first, Jamie Whincup second, Anton Di Pasquale third, Nick Percat fourth, Dave Reynolds fifth, Tim Slade in sixth, James Courtney in seventh, Cam Waters in eighth, Will Davison in ninth, and Mark Winterbottom in 10th. The following day was the backup event on the Sunday. Jamie Whincup was on pole. And then had a familiar ring to it, really. We had first was Shane van Gisbergen, second was Jamie Whincup, third Anton Di Pasquale, fourth Will Davison, fifth Will Brown, sixth Cameron Waters, seventh our boy Todd Hazelwood at last, eighth Tim Slade, ninth Chaz Mostert, and 10 Jack LeBrock. So, the biggest talking points for me coming out of that was the improved form of BJR, both in qualifying trim and in race trim. We know that that's been their Achilles heel for a majority of the year. My God, was it good to see them back up there. In particular, not so much Nick, but definitely Todd.
So stoked for how that turnaround happened. They've always loved going up to Townsville. It's kind of like, you say that every track, every team has their favourite tracks. I'm sure that they circle Townsville on the calendar. But yeah, Todd, super impressive. If not for the power steering failure in race 1 as well, he was on for another top 5, possibly even. Their strategy was on point. And Nick was there or thereabouts all weekend as well. The other two rookies, Jack and Macaulay, they're punching above their weight in those classes as well. But yeah, look, so stoked to finally get a good result for Todd on the Sunday.
Yeah, 100%. It was good to see and much needed, especially now that contract negotiations have started.
And they kept plugging it all weekend, didn't they?
Did they ever?
Kept getting in front of Brad and, Todd's done this and put it on P3 in the shootout. That must be good for his contract negotiations. But no, everyone's tight-lipped.
Yeah.
He's going to Triple Eight.
Oh, you're calling it?
Yeah. Big dreams.
You never know.
You never know.
The other takeaway for me was the dominance that Triple Eight had on that particular circuit. Significant dominance. I mean, they were winning by 30 seconds plus, and they were lapping the guys from Tickford Racing, for example, which were meant to be championship rivals that weekend.
Yeah, again, Triple Eight and Townsville, you may as well chalk that one up most years of the most races each year. So they did what everyone expected them to do. It was just a shock by how much they beat them. So gave everyone something to think about, and those longer races definitely played into Triple Eight's hands. We didn't see such a dominance this weekend.
Yeah. The other thing to note too was also the improvement from DJR. So it's clear that their drivers are now starting to become accustomed to how they now set their cars up. Anton with Ludo and Will with his engineer. And I did call it. I did say that Will was he was compiling a really consistent championship run. I think the gap's too big to SVG now to say that he's going to be a title favourite unless something drastically happens like a DNF. However,
it only takes one.
And he's now clearly going to be their main championship driver. I mean, Anton, I think, is going to be there or thereabouts, and he'll certainly be a top 10 contender, but he's had too many outs and too many issues over the course of this year to sort of justify that him being a title contender. So it was good to see that they were sort of starting to hit their stride, in particular for Will. I just think he's a classy driver. I think he needs to get more credit than what he actually gets, to be fair.
He knows what to do to put a championship together. He's had experience in all the big teams, and he's really helping Anton grow and help steer that ship back on track. There's obviously formed a lot around Scott and Fabian, and everyone's a different driver, so two fresh people in a team is going to take a little bit for everyone to get used to. So with Will's experience there, he's definitely helping steer that ship back on track. It's good to see them up the front, and again, same thing this weekend, they were there or thereabouts. Yeah,
exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. The big, I suppose, initial disappointment was Tickford, but geez, they make amends for that this weekend. So So what they've done is this weekend they ran the Townsville Super Sprint. So essentially that was, a series of 3 heats that were done on one day on the Saturday, and then obviously on the double header on the Sunday. So they were doing 39 lap races. So the first race was run yesterday, and Cameron Waters actually ended up getting first. Followed by Anton Di Pasquale, Chaz Mostert third, Tim Slade fourth, Jamie Whincup fifth, Shane Van Gisbergen sixth, Scott Pye seventh, James Courtney in eighth, our boy Todd in ninth, and Will Brand in 10th, and Anton secured the pole there. Then this morning's race, Van Gisbergen ended up winning the event, followed by Jamie Whincup, and that was a cracking race. I don't know whether you saw it, but the battle between those two, she was on.
Yeah.
Chaz Mostert was third, Will Davison fourth, Todd Hazelwood in fifth. He had a cracking weekend, old Todd. Scott Pye sixth, Brody Kostecki in seventh, Anton Di Pasquale in eighth, David Reynolds ninth, and Mark Winterbottom in 10th. And then this evening's race, which finished probably an hour and a half before we came on to air, Cameron Waters ended up winning, followed by Shane Van Gisbergen. Cameron had that race was punctuated by Tickford strategy. We'll touch on that in a sec. Will Davison third, Todd Hazelwood fourth, brilliant drive, and great strategy call by BJR as well. Fifth, Anton Di Pasquale, sixth, Jamie Whincup, seventh, James Courtney, eighth, Mark Winterbottom, ninth, Chaz Mostert, and 10th, Nick Percat. So, biggest takeaway from that, strategy still plays a part in this race when you throw a safety car into it.
And the use of tyres as well. They were obviously running on that super soft tyre, and with Townsville being a high degradation track, throws your strategy. So where do you use your tyres to gain your peak performance? And for some of these teams, it's about getting one good result and sacrificing a couple of others. But look, again, we touched on it in the first part, BJR performance, and especially Todd, top 10, all 3 races, and genuine pace.
Yeah, exceptional. Which, again, timely, but he's clearly got an affinity with that track in terms of how they set their car up as well. But it was good to see. But he was actually racy. Like, he was competing with DJR. He was throwing his weight around with SVG.
I made a point to send him a message straight after the 3rd race this afternoon just to say, look, that was absolute hustle on the first couple of laps. The way that he got his elbows out with the likes of DJR and Triple Eight to make sure that he didn't get muscled out of the way.
Yep.
He's come of age significantly this season, and I'm really proud to see that and see what the future's got for him.
Yeah. Well, we know the relationship that you got with Todd, and for me, it's, puts hair on his chest to the fact that he's been able to hustle the car from lowly grid positions and sort of go to the levels that he's gone. Now the key is to maintain that for the rest of the year. He belongs on that grid. He needs to have a drive next year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you said, he's overperforming in a car that doesn't have any right being in the top 5. They're an 8th or 9th, 10th at best sort of position car.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so that was the V8 Supercars covered. We'll take a short break before we end the stint, and we'll find out what grinds your gears, mate.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to Negative Camber with Jamie and Leigh, the official motorsport show of Scuderia Ferrari Club Adelaide. We are on the last lap, and as regular listeners of our podcasts know, we have a segment called What Grinds Leigh's Gears. Grinds your gears, mate.
All right, so this week I am in on cheap flat pack furniture.
Oh, God.
All right, that doesn't give you the right tools in the flat pack to do the job that you need to do. So I was building one from a store today. We won't go out and name drop, but they're very synonymous with cheap flat packs furniture. And they had this, I've never seen this thing before. I don't know if you've seen it. It was a double-ended screw. Okay,
No.
So there was not a Phillips head or a standard screwdriver setting for you to screw in. There was no nut to put on the double-ended screw to tighten it in. So one end went into the top of the table, and then you screwed it in, and then the other end went into your leg, right?
Yep.
But there was nothing to screw it in with. So they'd given you this tiny little hole, like a 1mm hole and an 8mm screw.
Yep.
What am I supposed to do with this? The instructions say to tighten it up with my fingers. I'm not tightening up nothing with it. It's an 8mm screw into a 1mm hole. What am I supposed to do here? At least give me a nut or something that I can reef on. But no, all I had was this little bit of thread. So I had to get the multi grips out and do the best that I could. In the end, we got there, but I've nearly torn half my thumb and half my index finger off trying to get it together first. How hard is it, really?
Bit of bush mechanic school there working for you again.
Yeah, old Paraka mechanics.
Paraka mechanics.
Go-kart the other week. But, how hard is it, honestly, right? I know it's cheap. I know we're not paying top dollar for it, but surely they're just the right tool. Couldn't be too much to ask for.
Yeah, look, we shared a similar experience with that today, in all honesty. We were building my son's, what we call a big boy bed. So he's gone. Yeah, I know. And there was an Allen key bolt and a washer that was meant to be fixed into the back of the sort of headboard, and one of the actual bolt hole mechanisms to actually have fixed the bolt into was missing. So he's fortunately everything was all sturdy enough and strong enough for not to worry about that one bolt. But yeah, I concur, it is a massive pain in the backside.
Didn't you have some cable ties or something you could have stuck the bed together with?
A few choice words and a couple of extra greys on my ever greying scalp was probably what contributed to that idea.
A few choice words and some hopes and dreams.
Yeah, I think we've got another 5 minutes to go before we wrap it up. But I'll tell you what grinds my gears. I'm going to open up a can of worms here.
Oh, look forward to this.
And we're going to karting.
You've really lashed out here. Now that we're on radio, you don't normally do a grind your gears.
Yeah, I know. You know what it is? It's weights and karting. So I saw a photo on the weekend of the Monado event in the 4-stroke class where there were 3 individuals standing on the podium who rightly won their races, but had loaded their go-karts up significantly with lead weight in order to participate in the heavy class. And they're very, very clearly in medium. Now, the rules allow them to do that, and there's no problem in doing that. I guess my biggest issue is, why would you want to load up 25 to 30 kilos of lead weight to participate in a class when you had half a dozen to a dozen runners in the medium class to race against.
So
I'm okay with 5 kilos here or there, but to load that up, I don't know, man. I think you kind of take the mickey out of the guys that are on that.
I'm on their side, unfortunately. Here,
I knew you would be.
Yeah, look, I come from a place where we did that as well. Back when I was running juniors, it wasn't uncommon for us to do 4 or 5 classes each.
Yep.
In a race weekend, and I was guilty of throwing 20 kilos on so I could race heavies instead of lights, or I could race lights, mediums and heavies all at once. Why wouldn't you want to run more races if you can? If you've got the option and you're at the track anyway and it's just a matter of bolting more lead on, why not? The clubs love it because they get an extra entry fee out of it. The sport loves it because they get an extra entry fee out of it. It makes the sport look bigger than it is without actually having more people at the track. So unfortunately, I'm on their side here. There was a time where they brought in a minimum cart weight to stop people doing that. Like, you had your guys like your Simons, for instance, where he was 50 kilos and they were bolting 100 kilos of lead, to the go-kart almost to make it. But then the go-kart was unsafe. So they did bring in a minimum cart weight.
Yep.
If they're not running that, then maybe that's something they could look at.
Look, it didn't affect me personally. And credit to the guys, they still had to drive it and get the results that they did. And congratulations to them. There's no issues with that as well. I just think if you're having to... I feel for the guys that, like myself, that are far heavier than some of those other individuals that are going to be further disadvantaged than what they already are, to have people then come into that category to then... sort of race like that.
But as well, it helps you guys out because you've got more competitors on the track. You've got more.
That's the flip side.
And again, to bolt that much static weight onto a go-kart is actually a disadvantage, right? It can have the negative effect of making your go-kart too heavy to perform the way that it needs to be performing. So it stops the go-kart doing the fundamental things that the go-kart's been designed to do if you put too much static lead on it. So there is that give and take a little bit as well. But yeah, unfortunately, I love bolting some lead on.
We've had our first disagreement as a couple. Can you believe it?
That's all right.
I know.
Me out.
Oh no. I think we're here, so that's all good. Look, that's enough for us tonight. I think we're going to call it a night for our first show on the air. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed giving the show to all listeners. If you have any feedback, by all means, email or contact the radio station or hunt us down individually.
Any song requests, let us know.
Exactly. But I wanted to pay tribute tonight to my beautiful wife and 2 kids for listening in and watching us do the show, and to all the members for their support. As a husband and a father and also a president, I hope I did you proud.
Perfectly said, and likewise to my family as well. They've put up with a lot to get us to where we are.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Can't do that without them, and appreciate all their love and support. So thanks everyone, and look forward to next time.
Yep. See you in a fortnight, guys.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.